what should esteemed audience know about Leslie Connor?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like I'm feel like I'm a face behind my books, not before them, which I don't know, that doesn't describe much, does it? So I think one of the notable things, I'm thinking about this because I'm going to do a career day at the high school next week. One notable thing I think is that I did not set out to be a writer. And that is sort of interesting to me. What I did set out to be was an artist, a visual artist. And in fact, I really kind of came to children's book writing through the Illustrator door, I thought. So yeah, I have my degree is in art, not in writing. And when I completed the degree, I took like a local adult education class with a local writer, because I knew I wanted to pair writing and illustrating. But I think I never thought that the writing world was something I could really touch. I really felt like that was something that was going to be harder. But it turned out to be just reverse for me. The writing actually came much more easily to me, and I leave almost no evidence behind that I ever entered as an illustrator. I immediately discovered that I had like a middle grade voice that I wanted to explore. And yeah, as soon as I acknowledged that, it was kind of, I did a little genre hopping in the beginning, and I had my first book was a picture book, not illustrated by me. I'll show you, I actually, blew the dust off this. It's out of print and everything, but I wrote Miss Bridie Chose a Shovel, and it was illustrated by Mary Azarian, who, if you know, is a Caldecott medalist. And it was a great experience. It was really funny because some of the sketches in my book, the scenes that I made, were very similar to what Mary ended up doing, only she did it with her beautiful woodcuts and her expertise. And so that ended up being a great entry in. But even by the time that book came out, I realized that, I was sort of encouraged by the response I was getting to pick my picture book texts through the rejection process, and by a local author who was leading the class, to consider that some of my work sounded like it wanted to be longer works of fiction. And it kind of didn't acknowledge it initially. And then I thought, well, why am I saying no to this when I know that I have this like kind of YA or middle grade thing running through my mind? And why don't I just go home and try? And, I sat down and 1,500 words later, I had really made a start on something that, of course, wasn't publishable, but it was definitely good practice. So I think saying that I didn't come to this through, a writer's degree or an MFA kind of pathway is I think sort of interesting. I think of Elizabeth Gilbert with Big Magic, and she said, you can learn from so many different places, and it's applying yourself and and doing this work and discovering that you have voice, and that's big. So yeah, I guess that I didn't plan to do this is sort of the most significant thing I can tell you about myself as a writer. That's really going to be a little different than what you usually hear.
It's going well.
Oh my goodness.
I had
well, it's true though. It's the truth.
Well, I had read that when you were young and you're living outside of I'm gonna mutilate this with my Indiana pronunciation, Schenectady, New York.
You got it.
Had worked for a company that sold some of the finest printing papers in all the land, and then he brought home these big, beautiful books that were so heavy that they pinned you to your chair when you held them in your lap.
Yep.
That struck me. There had to be a huge influence on you from a young age of steering you toward books.
Oh yeah, definite book love, definitely. Even I was a little bit of a reluctant reader though, interestingly enough, but a lot of these books were these beautiful archival books of things like the Audubon books and and other really well-known graphic designers and things. So I was looking at a lot of imagery And I have a feeling that, you know, for me, anytime I see something, I automatically, and this is when I should have acknowledged I was a writer a long time ago, I automatically start to, you know, go all starfish brain and start creating the story, which, you know, made it very hard to be, for instance, you know, a social studies student as a kid and, you know, trying to follow a history book. When I would come upon some cool detail or something, my mind immediately wanted to create its own story around it. And of course, that wasn't what the facts were. And so when you get to the multiple choice test, you're going to have a really hard time if you really just made up the story and didn't find out what the facts were. But that's me. I love to take, you know, some kind of thing, image, anything like that, and then grow it. And I mean, you know, these books that we had access to were really neat, and they really weren't kid books, really. They're just all different things, you know, there were famous designers like Ivan Shemaev and Saul Bass and gosh, I can't even name any more. I can't come up with them off the top of my head, but you know, yeah, the smell of their ink on the page and these bold images and often sort of strange images, you know, often you'd be turning it this way and that way and giving it a good look, you know, to decide. But those were the kind of books I spent a long time with. And yeah, they were big, heavy books, and they held you down to your chair. No tiny type to deal with. You know, I have a feeling I would have liked a big type. And then, you know, we were a family that read too. I mean, picture books are still one of my favorite things. And there were 4 of us growing up. And so we had nightly picture book readings, as I recall. And then, you know, as the siblings, my older siblings would then read to us. My sister in particular was really a great caretaker of the rest of us. And so we were always read to and had favorite books, still do. You know, I kind of confiscated all the family books and funny story. So my grandpa went to school with Theodore Geisel. And so we have books from Dr. Seuss that had been signed to my dad and his brother and his sister from all those years ago. So I kind of have those too. And we were, you know, we sort of knew at a young age that they were kind of collector's items or whatever, but it wasn't like we weren't allowed to touch them. They were, you know, you could play with the books, you could open the books. You couldn't color in them, but you could play with them.